think that our first, our second person is, so the opening going to closed session. She's still not here.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'll call this meeting to order. We're a little bit early tonight. We've got some business to take care of, but we'll make an effort to be back here at 7 o'clock sharp. If you would stand, we'll have an invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mr. Green.
Let's pray. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for the many blessings that you bestow upon us every day. We humbly ask that you will grant us part of your wisdom so that the decisions we make will be in the best interest of all the citizens of Poquoson. Please be with our first responders and their families, and the military and their families. In Jesus' name we pray.
Yeah. Thank you, buddy. Okay, first item on our agenda will be a closed session, and if someone, Mr. Green, would you take us there, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, I move that we convene a closed session pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia, 1950, as amended, to discuss a personnel matter to discuss appointments to Architectural Review Board.
Second.
All right, we have a motion made and second, and we go into closed session. Any comments, concerns? If not, Ms. Kim?
Councilman Fye? He's not here. Councilman Southall?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman?
Aye.
Councilman Hucks?
Aye.
Councilman Green?
Aye.
And Mayor Hessel?
All right.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 5-0.
Okay, thank you, Kim. We'll be back.
Keith, you said it's right on the front. slap.
Yeah.
For the camera to come on.
There it is.
Here we go. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we all reconvened from our closed session. And Mr. Green, would you certify that for us, please?
We certify a closed session then that we talked about only what we convened.
Okay.
Second.
All right, we have a motion second that we certify that closed session. Ms. Kim, please.
Councilman Fye?
Aye.
Councilman Green?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman?
Aye.
Councilman Southall?
Aye.
Cox? Mayor Hessel?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 6-0.
Okay, thank you, Kim. Next item is some special presentations, and the first one I'll give to the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. First, a quick recognition before the introduction. I'd like to recognize and thank Mr. Al Melton for being here this evening.
Hey, Al.
Mr. Melton is Poquoson's representative to the Thomas Nelson Community College Board, and it is my pleasure and his to introduce to you Dr. Brannon. She is the newly minted, or recently minted, president of Thomas Nelson Community College.
All right.
And I would note to you, as she's making her way up there, that we're already working together on something.
Wonderful, wonderful. Dr. Brennan, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you
It's good
very
to
much.
see you.
Thank you, thank you. To the mayor and the vice mayor, our city manager, and to the members of the city council. I do appreciate this. As Mr. Wheeler mentioned, I have been the president at Thomas Nelson Community College for about 1 year and 20-something days. It has been an incredible ride, and I thank you for this opportunity to present. I'm going to give you some updates about the college, where we are, some statistics. Now, if any of you saw my presentation to the school board, I'm going to need you to go ooh and ah as if it's the first time that you're hearing it again. There is some new information, but I did want to also acknowledge my board member who has been, you have sent an incredibly supportive member of the Poquoson community to represent Thomas Nelson, and he is also a hoot, and I've had a pleasure working with Mr. Melton. So I know you have a very packed agenda this evening, and so I'd like to just share some information about the college that I think that you may find important, but also relevant to when we talk about how our college works together. Let me check 1 second. This is the wrong presentation, so hold on. This is the school board presentation, so luckily I have the other presentation in my pocket. I'm going to go grab it. I used to be a school teacher, so you always have to be prepared. And the Girl Scout. There we are. All righty. There we go. Okay, so back to the show. So, as of this year, or as of last year, Thomas Nelson became the 6th largest college in the Virginia Community College system. And so that is actually down. We used to be the 5th largest college in the Virginia Community College system. And so while enrollments are down across the nation and in the VCCS, there's a number of things that we're doing at Thomas Nelson to increase our enrollment. And it's not, when I speak about increasing enrollment, it's really not a college initiative, but we are here to change lives, right? To transform communities and to provide education and training and help move folks and give them social opportunities, social and economic mobility opportunities. So when we're not enrolling students, we're not serving our community properly. And so when I talk about enrollment, we need to enroll more students because our employers need a workforce, right? The healthcare and many other areas need people to be employed. So we have to educate and train them. So that's why that enrollment is a huge deal for me, because our community is relying on them, on us to help put more people into the workforce. And so a little breakdown of what our enrollment does include. We have about 9,600 students who are enrolled in credit-bearing courses. A little over 2,000 of those students are enrolled in high school and the college at the same time. And later on, I'm going to share with you some of your Poquoson-specific information. 1,100 of our students, an additional 1,100, are enrolled in the short-term, non-credit courses, so plumbing and welding and maybe real estate courses. So overall, we serve a little over 10,000 students each year. And last year, for the first time, we awarded 26 students both an associate degree and a high school diploma at the same time. And so we're hoping to do more of that, to expose more students to college and getting a college education prior to them graduating high school. Just a breakdown of what our student body looks like. 60% of our student body is female, which is normal in higher education today, but also we've lost a lot of men in higher education, and that's another area that we're looking to address. And so having more men who are not only formally educated, but have the skills, high wage, high demand skills are really important. So we're looking to increase our male enrollment. 31% of our students are adults. They're 25 years and older. 49% are minorities, and that's just in race and ethnicity, so Black, Hispanic, Asian. 58% are considered underserved. So that would be the poor. If you're a first-generation American, first-generation college student, over 58% of the students we serve are traditionally underserved students. And 25% of our student population are military affiliated. We are very proud of the partnerships we have with our local military, the active duty service men and women, and our veterans, and the military spouses all make a very rich part of our fabric as a college. Our fall-to-fall retention rate is 62%. That means 62% of the folks who started this fall will return next fall, which is pretty good comparatively speaking to national rates, but always room for improvement. The college's 3-year graduation rate is 28%, which I'm actually really happy to share. 28% is well above the national average. The national average is around 22% for a 3-year college graduation rate. And when you look at our graduation rate compared to just 5 years ago, we're at 19% of our students graduating in 3 years compared to 28% now. So an almost 10% increase in under 5 years is pretty impressive for any institution. So a little bit of information that's specific to the Poquoson City. 74 Poquoson residents enrolled last year. And of those residents, 50% have been retained, which is a little under the college average of 52%, but we also noticed that Poquoson residents tend to transfer earlier. And so that's not a bad thing. They're still enrolled in higher education, just not at Thomas Nelson, and they tend to move on to 4-year institutions just a little bit quicker than others. The average GPA of a traditional Poquoson resident is 2.9 compared to our other student populations, which is 2.7. And these are traditional students, not the students enrolled in dual education, right? Not enrolled in high school. So your traditional students, your adults taking classes at the college, have a higher GPA than our other student populations. And they accumulate about 31 credits per year. 31 credits per year is impressive for any college student. A lot of college students, that's an aggressive calendar. For full-time adults, 31 credits is quite a bit. Our college average is 32, so the Poquoson student data is not that much different from our other student data. Our graduation rates for our Poquoson students is also, I think, pretty impressive. Of the 19 students that graduated last year, they received 21 awards, which is impressive. That means a couple of them received a certificate and an associate's degree both at the same time, so that's always exciting. And they have a 23% graduation rate within 3 years. Now, that's a little bit lower, right? But again, many of them transfer on to other institutions prior to graduation. So it's not that they're not graduating, they're just graduating somewhere else, and it's usually a 4-year institution. And so half of the students who did transfer last year, they are currently enrolled in a 4-year institution this year. And that's very exciting to see students continue their education. And what we've noticed is that the majority of students who leave Thomas Nelson and graduate end up at Old Dominion or Christopher Newport, and they study business at higher rates than any other programs. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the dual enrollment. We're always very impressed with dual enrolled students. I'm not sure that I, as a high school student, I could have been taking college classes at the same time, but the high school students in Poquoson do a really great job. I love when I look at the growth of dual enrollment. About 5 years ago, Poquoson had 34 students enrolled in our dual enrollment programs. And as of last year, there's 113 students. And so that is an increase of over 200%. And I have to give credit to the guidance counselors and the principals in the schools and the superintendent, who is just amazing folks to work with and are really responsible for helping more families understand the value of taking college classes while they're still in high school. So this is very, very, very impressive. And when we compare school systems, you see that Poquoson is one of the only school systems where we've seen growth in dual enrollment over the last year. And so I think that is from the very intentional efforts of the superintendent and the principals and the guidance counselors to really introduce and expose students and their families to the opportunities and advantages of taking college classes while they're still in high school. Your Poquoson City high school students have a 3.4 GPA. Now, I mentioned earlier that the average GPA at the college was a 2.7, and for Poquoson traditional students, it's a 2.9. Your high school students have a 3.4 GPA, which is incredible. The average college student does not have a 3.4 GPA, so your students are doing incredibly well while pursuing their high school diplomas, and they earn an average of 7 credits at the time they graduate. So that fluctuates. Some students take many more, some just take 1 course, but I think this is pretty incredible to see the academic outcomes. So these students are starting their college education with a B+ average, and that's really great as they move on. I did want to share that when we look at the dual enrolled students who were with us last year and graduated, 64% of them are at a 4-year institution right now, and that's pretty incredible. 20% of them are still with Thomas Nelson. There's only 15 that have not continued their college education, and I did want to share that you actually provide funding for the college. There's a scholarship called Finish What You Start. And what we do with those funds is we reach out to these students and we say, hey, you started your education at Thomas Nelson Community College. You can finish that education and get your associate's degree at no cost to you based on funding that's provided by the city of Poquoson. And those students who wish to return are able to return at no cost to them and their families and finish at least their associate's degree at Thomas Nelson. And so each year we reach out and we ask those students to return. We reached out to the 15 who did not finish their college education, and 2 of them said yes. We will come back, and so they're now currently enrolled, and thanks to the city of Poquoson, they don't have to pay $1 worth of tuition because of the support that you provide the college. So on behalf of those 2 students, thank you very much. So I mentioned the Finish What You Start scholarship. There's also a number of other scholarships that identify being a resident of Poquoson to be eligible for the scholarship. And in the last 5 years, we've awarded $20,000 to 22 students. And it could be an academic scholarship, a need scholarship, but any student who has the desire to continue their education and maybe they don't have the funding to continue their education, we're able to award scholarships to those students, and there are 22 students who won scholarships specifically because they're residents of Poquoson. So on behalf of those students, I also thank you very, very much. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the funding that you provide with the college. Actually, before I talk about the funding, I'd like to talk about partnerships. Mr. Wheeler mentioned partnerships, and we are working diligently to be re-engaged with our community and to identify what are some of the needs of our community. And so Mr. Wheeler has been looking to get a public speaking training initiative going on with our workforce development unit. And so prior to me coming here, someone said, you know, Mr. Wheeler's been trying to get that program up and running for like over a year. And I said, when I see Mr. Wheeler tonight, I need to be able to tell him that Thomas Nelson is going to have that initiative up and running this spring. And so I met him outside and I said, I spoke to the right people and we will have that training initiative in place for you this spring. But I share that because there are a number of opportunities that the college is poised to be able to accept, and we want to be able to provide our community with the training and the education that they need. So I share that because we are ready to be of service, and so I want you to know if there's a training need that you have, we have the ability to customize training, whether it's for small groups or larger groups. So I wanted to share that from me on behalf of the college. If there's an initiative that you have in place, we'd love to help you identify how you can, how you can provide training to your teams or to teams that you know. So I wanted to share that my team is on board, and Mr. Wheeler will have your class up and running for you this spring. So I'll talk a little bit about the funding. There are a number of ways that the city of Poquoson funds Thomas Nelson Community College. And one of those ways is site improvement, which is really, really important. And so as you may have heard, we had our auditorium, the roof collapsed, and the entire auditorium is unusable. The building it was attached to had to be vacated while we do construction. And so where do you put all your faculty and your staff and your students? And then how do you rebuild? Our insurance allows us to rebuild the building the way it looked 20 years ago. And we said, thinking about today's technology and what COVID-19 has made possible when it comes to video conferencing and audiovisual tools, we want to build something better. And so because of some of the funding that you provide, we're able to relocate our faculty, our staff, and especially our students to have classroom spaces. We're able to retrofit some spaces. There's a new building that we're leasing, and it's just a big, wide open building, almost like a warehouse, and we're going to be retrofitting it so that we can actually educate our students there, and so that our teachers and our students have a place to work and to study. We're also going to be able to rebuild the Mary T. Christian Auditorium. I don't know what the new name will be, but we're going to be able to rebuild it and modernize it, and a lot of that is because of the funds that you have dedicated to the college. So we're able to dedicate some of those funds to making the spaces better than they were before. We have a center in the historic Triangle area, which is dedicated to skilled trades training, and $1,500 of the dollars that you provide goes to making sure that those spaces, those classrooms, are also updated with the current technology and tools that we need to train our citizens for high demand and high wage jobs. And then I mentioned the Finish What You Started scholarship, which is $10,500 at this point that we use to make sure that anyone who was a former dual enrolled student can finish their education at zero cost to their families. And so again, I want to welcome other opportunities for us to work together to think about other ways that the college can help bring modern and urgently needed critical training and education to the city of Poquoson. And I believe that is all I have.
Any questions, Dr. Brandon?
I'd like to say that, you know that I'm a fan of Thomas Nelson. I worked there for almost 5 years. Great opportunity. One story I do share with some people is my son went off to school, went to Georgia Tech, not Virginia, Georgia Tech. And during the summer, he came back and enrolled in a differential equations class at Thomas Nelson. And while he was there, he networked and got himself a job at Colonial Williamsburg. And so not only did I get a son that got a very inexpensive course out of the way, he got a job, and he stayed out of trouble for the whole summer. So I appreciated Thomas Nelson.
Absolutely, absolutely. That may be our new tagline, we keep kids out of trouble. Absolutely.
Any other questions of Dr. Brandon? That was a very informative presentation. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for what you do for all your kids.
Absolutely, thank you all.
Appreciate it so much.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
And who else could stand up there while people are watching and get the program set up?
Okay, we have another presentation that I actually have the honor of doing. It's a recognition of our retired Commonwealth Attorney, Benjamin Hahn, better known as Benji. And so I'm going to ask him to join me at the podium, and his family is welcome there as well. I don't have anything prepared because I couldn't find anything good to say about him. He knows I'm fooling. Benji was, and he is, well known for his passion as a prosecutor, doing all that he could do to punish those who were found guilty of a crime, but he was also known for the kindness that he showed to the victims of that crime. As Benji enters his retirement years, we thank him for the dedication not only to our city, but his service to York County, indeed the Commonwealth of Virginia. Benji's career has been one of success. He has supported his oath. He has, through his distinguished career, brought great credit not only on himself, but also to the city of Poquoson, the county of York, and the Commonwealth of Virginia. Benji, on behalf of council, we want to pray that you and your family stay in good health, that prosperity stays with you, and that you find happiness in all that you do. Certainly my honor on behalf of City Council and the residents of this city to present you with a plaque to thank you. Tonight is bittersweet in so many ways. We're saddened by Benji's well-deserved retirement, but we're elated that he will be able to spend more time with his wife Judy, more time with his children, Stephen and Carrie, and special time to spend with his grandchildren. Benji is a lifelong resident of Poquoson, was the city attorney from 1981 to 1997. And during his time as city attorney, Benji served many members of council and did so with great honesty and great integrity, two traits that I know Benji holds very dear. So Benji has been the Commonwealth Attorney for Poquoson and the County of York from 2012 to 2021. During this time as Commonwealth Attorney, for all you have done, Benji, during your many years of service, we want to wish you Godspeed, and we want to present you with this plaque, and I'll read it. It says, presented to Benjamin M. Horn, in grateful appreciation of your many years of outstanding service as a Commonwealth Attorney for the city of Poquoson.
Thank you, Gordon.
And you, if you want to say a few words, you're welcome.
I would, if you don't
No,
mind.
I don't mind.
If you would indulge me. Forgive me for taking notes, but I've always believed I was a better writer than I was a speaker, and the written word serves as a security blanket for me. And Mayor Helsel, members of council, Mr. City Manager, City Attorney, and Madam Clerk, I'm honored to be here this evening. I find it's very suitable that my last public appearance in my career is before the body. I began my public service in 1981. I served as city attorney for 16 years, and it was an honor. I sincerely appreciate you and thank you for the kind words and this plaque. But there should be many, many people who should be standing here at this podium with me that I owe a debt of gratitude to, and I would not be here but for them. And in fact, but for the city council of the city, I would not be here for the trust and faith they had in me in 1981. And I could tell many stories about those 16 years, but I will tell one because the mayor was involved. And I learned 3 important lessons from that episode that sustained me, particularly in the 10 years when I was the elected Commonwealth's attorney, and the buck stops there and you got to make the decisions and have no one else to blame but yourself. And the saga that I went through as city attorney involved a young lady who was extremely distressed over the condition of a home she had recently built in Poquoson. And she became dissatisfied with how the city administration and city manager were responding to her complaints, so she began appearing before the city council, speaking at the audience for visitors. And one evening, after many appearances, the mayor said, your 3 minutes are up, ma'am. Would you please wrap up and yield the podium? And she refused to do this and went on and on and on. And finally, the mayor had to summon a police officer to ask that he remove her from the chambers. Well, the city council went through its remaining agenda. We went upstairs in the old municipal building to do an executive session. I have no idea what it was about. And there came a tapping at the door, and the chief of police said, the magistrate needs to speak with the city attorney. So I walked out of the room, went down and talked to the magistrate, and she said, I need to know whether to charge this lady under the local ordinance or the state statute. And I learned my first lesson in what's known as prosecutorial discretion. Although I had absolutely no authority as a city attorney who just does civil matters, as Wayne well knows, I told the magistrate, in no uncertain terms that I didn't think a criminal charge was appropriate under the circumstances, and ordered the police officer to release her from custody. I thought I'd done the right thing. Went home, and no sooner than I got home, the phone was ringing, and I answered it, and it was a Daily Press reporter who was incensed. I mean, I could hear the steam coming out of his ears, that the city council had the audacity to violate this woman's constitutional right to freedom of speech. And being young and naive, and I didn't think the council had done a single thing wrong, particularly since we had let her go and hadn't charged her when we could have. And I said, well, I think that, I feel very strongly that no one has a constitutional right to act like a spoiled child in a public meeting. Well, that ended up front page quote in the Daily Press the next morning. And I, along with Gordon and the other members of the city council, got named as a defendant in a $6 million federal lawsuit. So, learned prosecutorial discretion. I learned also be circumspect in dealing with the press. And we went to federal court and sat through it, and Judge Dumar at the end of it struck the plaintiff's evidence and dismissed the case. And we went home to live another day. But I also learned that my third important lesson that I treasured throughout my 10 years as a Commonwealth attorney: no good deed goes unpunished. And I'm sure y'all are familiar with that, sitting in the seats you occupy. And I wouldn't be here but for my family, loving support and encouragement. But the main reason I'm here is because I was blessed with dedicated and experienced, trustworthy attorneys and support staff during the past 10 years. And it's that group of people who should be standing here with me that y'all should be praising and recognizing, because they do a wonderful job, and they're very seldom recognized for what they do. They operate behind the scenes. And words are inadequate for me to express the gratitude I owe to them. But you and the citizens can rest assured that the office is in good hands. 3 attorneys have been there with me over 20 years. Kristen Reed, who is the acting Commonwealth's attorney, is well respected and do a fine job, as will Donna Maw and Jeremy Markle and Caitlin Attlee, who form the core group. They will see that justice is done within York County and the city of Poquoson. But in closing, I would be remiss if I didn't soberly advise you that crime is increasing in both the county and the city. It's increasing in both volume and violence. I'll give you a concrete example. When I came to the Commonwealth in 1997, there were generally 2 homicides pending. They would be overlapping. One we would be wrapping up when another one was beginning the litigation. As a matter of fact, when we didn't have anything, homicide pending, we had a little gallows humor that said, well, somebody's going to get killed because we don't have a homicide pending. When I left office at the end of the year, we had 8 homicide cases pending, 5 murders. One of the murder cases is a capital case in which the defendant killed 2 people in a simultaneous transaction. And although the death penalty is no longer on the table, I can tell you capital cases take a lot of time and effort. So I urge you to support those people who are in public safety. They're under tremendous pressure these days, and as y'all I'm sure recognizes, there's a general lack of respect for authority of any nature. unfortunately, in our country, state, community. And be mindful that the Commonwealth Attorney's Office is just as much a part of the public safety endeavor as the Sheriff's Office and the Police Department. I would often tease Sheriff Diggs and remind him that under the Constitution of Virginia and the statutes of the Commonwealth, that the Commonwealth's attorney was the chief law enforcement officer of a locality. But since the sheriff wears a gun and I don't, I didn't press that issue very far. But I want to urge you to remember that the Commonwealth Attorney's Office is crucial to the administration of justice and to public safety, because if you don't have good, competent, experienced people in that office, for all the efforts to apprehend and punish criminals that the chief of police and his folks and the sheriff and his deputies put forward, it just turns into a catch and release program. The Commonwealth Attorney's Office has to ensure conviction. So I thank you for your recognition. I am grateful for the many years that I served as city attorney. It was the best training to be Commonwealth's attorney, and I was a better prosecutor for it. Thank you.
All right. Let's move on to our audience for visitors. If there's anyone in the audience who would like to address the council on any issue, now would be the time to do that. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of our minutes. Regular session, December 13th, 2021.
Mayor, I move that we approve the minutes of our regular session of December 13th, 2021.
Second.
All right, motion made second, we adopt those minutes. Any concerns, comments, questions? None? Ms. Kim, please.
Councilman Hux.
Aye.
Councilman Southall.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman.
Aye.
Councilman Green.
Aye.
Councilman Five.
Aye.
Mayor Hessel.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 6-0.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kim, appreciate that. We have one public hearing, which is item H. The public hearing is pre-budget fiscal year 2023. Randy, you want to make some comments before we open it?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. By tradition, the city of Poquoson, sorry, McCain's not behaving. By tradition, the city of Poquoson holds each year about this time of the year a pre-budget public hearing to allow interested members of the public to provide their suggestions or any other thoughts that they may have with regard to the budget prior to us beginning work on the budget for the upcoming year in earnest. Some of it has already been underway, but the major decisions on their way to the recommended budget, which we will present in April, are just now beginning to come together. So we afford this opportunity for the public to provide their comments, as well as during the normal budget public hearing after the budget has been provided.
Okay, thank you, Randy. Let's open the public hearing then. Is there anyone that would like to address the fiscal year 2023 budget? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Action by council, we'll move on. New business, first item, ordinance for fiscal year 2022, general fund, coronavirus emergency supplemental funding, police department. Chief?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. In October of '21, the police department applied through the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services for coronavirus emergency supplemental funding for calendar year '22. Opportunity providing no match funding for local police departments to acquire funding that would address coronavirus mitigation and prevention. When this opportunity presented itself, we discussed ways that we could prepare our department to better serve our community. without interruptions in circumstances like what we've been battling for the last 2 years through the coronavirus pandemic. And some of the opportunities that were discussed, one of the things that we did not have the opportunity to do was to allow our administrative staff that don't have to directly involve themselves out in the community on response to calls. We didn't have the opportunity to allow them to work from home. We didn't have the technological abilities. And so through this grant, one of the things that we had requested was laptops and necessary software capability to allow if the need arises for our administrative personnel to work from home, so that the work still gets done, but it limits exposures in and out of the department. Another piece of equipment that we found necessary through the process of dealing with coronavirus was in the decontamination of our vehicles. We have acquired some equipment that allows us to do some decontamination, but one item that was missing was a vacuum cleaner that would not only take things out that were deposited in the process of doing the work, but filter that so that it doesn't just blow it into the air as a lot of vacuum cleaners do. And so what this grant allows us to do is $5,480 that will allow us to acquire these pieces of equipment and technology that will allow us to serve our community uninterrupted and help to mitigate things like the coronavirus. So before you tonight is an ordinance authorizing the city manager to receive and appropriate these funds in fiscal year 22.
Okay, any questions of the chief? Chief, I will say this to you. You pass on to your officers and certainly to you the appreciation of this council, appreciation of the citizens of this community on jobs that y'all, that each of you do. It's, not everybody can put on a uniform and go out every day and expect to be safe. It doesn't happen much anymore. So we appreciate you and we appreciate your department.
Yes, sir. We appreciate the support of council and our community as well.
Okay, let's move to the ordinance for fiscal year 2022 for general fund, coronavirus, emergency supplemental funding for the police department.
Mayor, I move that we adopt an ordinance authorizing the city manager to accept the coronavirus supplemental funding grant and making additional appropriations for fiscal year 2022 for general fund.
Okay?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion made second. We adopt the ordinance. Any concerns, comments? Any questions? If not, Ms. Kim?
Councilman Southall?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman?
Aye.
Councilman Hucks?
Aye.
Councilman Green?
Aye.
Councilman Fye?
Aye.
Mayor Hessel?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 6
All right, thank you, ma'am. Item 2 under new business is an ordinance making appropriations for fiscal year 2022. These are life pack defibrillators, and is it 15 of them? Is that right?
That is, the LifePak 15 is the model.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
So this brings an ordinance forth for council to appropriate additional grant monies for the fiscal year 22. When we started the budget year, council appropriated $33,000 towards the purchase of one LifePak 15 defibrillator for our fire department. We got that news, we were very excited, and we approached the manager's office with a proposal to delay that purchase by a few months and try to seek a grant to match that monies, because if one defibrillator was good, two would be better. We applied for the grant with their support, and we were successful. So now we would like to appropriate that grant money and purchase 2 defibrillators. The total cost is $61,130. The city has already, through Capital Project Fund, identified our local match of $30,565, and our grant would match the other 50% of that. So it allows us to purchase two brand new units to finally replace the last 2 LifePak 12 units that we have in service, which are currently not supported anymore. And I'll happily answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? I tell you, these guys just do a remarkable job with grants. You know, it's really unbelievable how you guys stay on top of those things. And just magically, we got this money showing up, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful. Are there any questions? Okay, the resolution, it's an ordinance making appropriations for fiscal year 2022, Life Pack 15 defibrillators.
Mayor, I move that we adopt an ordinance making additional appropriation for 2022 to purchase Life Pack 15 defibrillators.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second that we adopt the ordinance. Are there any questions or concerns? Any comments at all? If not, Ms. Kim, please.
Vice Mayor Freeman.
Aye.
Councilman Southall.
Aye.
Councilman Fye.
Aye.
Councilman Hux.
Aye.
Councilman Green.
Aye.
Mayor Hessel.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 6-0.
Thank you, Pam. Let's move on to item 3, which will be the last item under new business, a resolution making appointments to various boards and commissions. Mr. Green?
Mayor, I move that we adopt a resolution making appointments to Library Advisory Board and Architectural Review Board with the following names inserted. For the Library Advisory Board, Terry L. Jackson and Patricia D. Green. Their terms will expire January 31st, 2025. For the Architectural Review Board, Donald F. Booth Jr. and Tanner R. Showalter. Their terms will expire on the same date, January 31st, 2025.
Okay, there's a motion,
Second.
and we have a second. Any concerns, comments? If not, we need to adopt the resolution with those names inserted. And we've got a second, Ms. Kim?
Councilman Green.
Aye.
Councilman Hux.
Aye.
Councilman Fye.
Aye.
Councilman Southall.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman.
Aye.
Mayor Hessel.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 6-0.
Thank you, Kim. Mr. Wheeler?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Really just one comment this evening. As everyone in this room is aware and everyone watching at home, beginning on Friday afternoon and through the evening and into Saturday, we got what is for us an uncharacteristic amount of snow. And on Saturday, I stayed home, in part because I'm still walking on a cane, but I didn't go anywhere. And the reason I mention that is because there are those of us like me on that day that could do that because there's a small but dedicated group of people, our public works people and our police officers and our fire department who are there 24 hours a day. And particularly in a storm, public works comes into that. And I thought they did a fantastic job of maintaining the streets. All the feedback that I have received from anyone has been positive about how quickly and how thoroughly they did their job. And that just makes everything better. And PD and the fire department were as always, up on top of the task as well. And it's just nice to live in a community where you can say that. So I just want to thank them and acknowledge their work.
Okay, and I couldn't agree with you more, Randy. Could you prepare a letter?
I will.
For all of our signatures?
Absolutely.
Okay. Comments of the city clerk. Ms. Kim?
Thank you, Mayor Hessel. Currently, we have an unexpired vacant board seat for the Planning Commission. The item is going to be on the February